Oh boy, do we have a good region to get into today. Now, this one may have been voted least likely to be settled in high school, but it's not as bad as you might think. Or maybe I'm just drowning in cope after making my characters live here for so long. I suppose I'll let you be the judge of that. In relation to other regions, you'll see that the Unwanted Zone is in the middle eastern part of the map. This makes it a prime location for approaching in-game content in the southeastern portion of the map, as well as interacting with the United Cities, whatever your intentions are with them. But what ends up earning this area its notorious unwanted status, despite the value of its location, is its hostile wildlife and acid rain. Honestly, the acid rain isn't too much of an issue for me. After all, the rainwater isn't even safe to consume in the United States. But I do understand if wildlife is a concern for some, so let's get into that first. The primary threat you'll find in the Unwanted Zone are beak things. They make up a substantial portion of spawn mobs here, and they do have nests which can contribute to large groups of beak things patrolling the area. During my time in the Unwanted Zone, I found that there were more beak things than most other places in Kenshi. Only Gut, the crater, and perhaps the bone fields could possibly outmatch how many beak things I saw in the Unwanted Zone. To be fair though, there aren't just beak things in the Unwanted Zone, so there's a good chance other things will spawn instead of beak things. For one, you'll see swamp raptors. These are hardly a problem until you set up a base and then start farming, which point they're going to take interest in your fresh produce. You might want to give them a break though, since by most economical standards, the world of Kenshi qualifies as a food desert. Aside from beak things and swamp raptors, there's not a whole lot to worry about as far as animals go. You're going to see leviathans on rare occasion, but they're pretty chill unless you get too close. There's going to be our sweet precious crabs too, which are going to have their own nests. As adept as crabs are at combat, they're pretty slow and they're not going to attack you unless you enter their territory. Beyond these animals, there are some rarer spawns like gorillas, goats, and swamp turtles, but I didn't see much of them. Notably, in the Unwanted Zone, there isn't much going on in terms of human spawns. If you see any, they'll likely be reavers or grass pirates that wander in from the eastern portion of the map, but other than that, you're not going to see many human spawns, which I suppose is to be expected given how hostile the terrain and the environment are in the Unwanted Zone. Truth be told, the wildlife here would make quick work of just about any faction in the game. Except for skin bandits, they're skeletons and they don't care about being eaten. You might be surprised though that resource-wise, the Unwanted Zone fares pretty well. It even has green fertility. The closest comparison would be the fertility that you find in Vane, which is very good. Green fertility is always nice to have. And this green fertility gives it an edge on many of the other regions if you're looking to grow things like wheat, hemp, and cotton. This paired with the abundance of animals in the area, and you have an ideal setup for just mass producing food cubes or meat wraps at a scale that would almost make you consider selling food as a way to make money. For stone, copper, iron, and water, the Unwanted Zone fares all right. The biggest issue, which is common among a lot of regions in the Kenshi, is finding quality copper and enough copper, sometimes just one copper, that's close enough to where you're settling. This is paired, unfortunately, with the iron quality in the Unwanted Zone being lower, but there are some places where you can get quality iron. If you want an idea of which factions will be paying your base a visit if you settle in the Unwanted Zone, then I can say that there is quite an array of factions who may be visiting you. It just depends on where you settle in this region. All things considered, crab raiders, the reavers, slave traders, United Cities, and the Traders Guild are all fair game, but again, it's going to depend on where in the Unwanted Zone that you settle. No matter which factions end up coming your way, it would be fair to say that settling in the Unwanted Zone is not for the faint of heart. You should definitely have well-trained characters ready to go if you're looking to live here. The chaos in the Unwanted Zone would be close to what you would see in Gut or in the Bone Fields, I would say. Not quite as difficult as the Stove regions or Fishman Isle, but difficult nonetheless. If you set out to build a base, just make sure that you're ready to build those defenses as soon as possible. And if you're not prepared, try to make multiple trips rather than one so that you're not left out in the open for too long, because the wildlife and the other factions will come for you. That's enough doom and gloom for now, though, because I think that the Unwanted Zone is a mighty fine place to settle. As you can see here, there are multiple viable locations that you could set up your base here in the Unwanted Zone. Some of them even having green and arid fertility, which is always a plus. Even if you're slow to get started with farming, you're going to have all the meat you could possibly need from the wildlife. Also, as is the case with the bone fields or the Leviathan coast, you're going to have a tremendous amount of hide if you settle here. So you'll be able to craft leather for profit or for armor for your characters with ease. You're just going to have everything you need in that area. The green fertility plays directly into this too, because with that green fertility, you can grow hemp or cotton for the fabric that you need for crafting armor or weapons if you'd like. The trick with this region ultimately is to use its harsh environment to your advantage. Just as the wildlife could be hunted for armor crafting, this wildlife will also be an obstacle for those attacking your base. I'd encourage you, if let's say you have a beak thing nest near your base, to let the beak thing nest be. That way you can lure attackers into the beak thing nest if your base is not ready to defend. Also, having a beak nest nearby ensures that there are always going to be beak things that you can harvest for hide and food. Beak things also drop fowl meat and raw meat. This will mean that the raw meat, of course, can be cooked for your human characters, but along with that, the raw meat, the fowl raw meat, without even cooking it, can be fed to your hive soldier drones, your hive worker drones, and any animals that you have at your base. Another major benefit of living in the Unwanted Zone is you're not too far from Black Scratch. Black Scratch is, since it's a tech hunter city, odds are you're not hostile with them, and you can go to war with the United Cities if you want, and at least you'll still have that major city available for trading. And I completely understand if the acid rain is a problem for you, but over my extensive experience now in Kenshi, acid rain is no longer a holdup for me, because you have several pieces of armor which are quite good that grant you acid protection. The main examples of that being, of course, the dust coat and the long coat. Just a dust coat or a long coat is going to give a character all the coverage that they need, and it's a solid piece of armor that I still use late into the game because of how good it is. And if your characters are well trained enough to live in somewhere like the Unwanted Zone, Stove's Garden, or Fishman Isle, then they should have the gear that they need to handle the acid rain. But hey, if you're looking for something that's similar to the Unwanted Zone but doesn't have that acid rain, then I'd say you should check out the Leviathan Coast. It's in a completely different region of the map. It's more secluded, it's less threatened by the more powerful factions in the game, so it might be a good fit for what you're looking for. I'm gonna head out for now, but I'll see you all in the next guide. Take it easy.